Hello, welcome. How are you? I'm gonna be honest, I've been brain dead. And when I'm brain dead, I start talking about the Black Death. I feel like it's normal. I feel like that's sort of the default topic that's always at the back of everyone's mind. I can't be the only one thinking about the fucking rager that was the 1340s to early 1350s CE. Anyway, I know what you're here for. It's to hear me ramble and get off topic about 4 times before I finally come back around to the point of the video. Do these videos have a point? Whatever, let's light this candle. We're gonna get into the general information for the layman, just in case you don't know the hard statistics of the Black Death by heart, like I obviously do. I am immediately going to get some flack for this. One of the most contested topics on the Black Death is when it started. I'm gonna be almost exclusively talking about Europe in this. For that reason, I'm going to say that the Black Death emerged in Europe in 1348. You could definitely argue me on that. 100% you could argue me on that. You could say that it arrived in Europe in October 1347 by boat. I'm not here to niggle those details with you. Really, it's up for debate. As to when it ended, the general consensus is usually 1351 to 1353. But I mean, the plague never went away. Those dates are just to give a general time frame to the massive pandemic that we now call the Black Death. They didn't call it that, by the way, if you wanted to know. They called it the Great Mortality, which points for creativity. Something bit my leg, I swear to God. I'm not making this up. You know what, my personal favorite? The pestilence. I don't know what about that word gets me. I really don't. It's straddling S tier on my list of favorite words. I actually have a list in the event of these moments specifically. Exegesis, which is, it's just a fancy word for explanation. Laconic, which is like speaking very concisely. Benighted, overtaken by night. Sardonic, okay, which is, it's like mocking or doing something in a mocking manner. I have a list so long. Back to the topic. The second highly contested number that I have for you today is the amount of people killed during the Black Death. And that is a huge estimate, huge gap in numbers, in opinions, really. I'm just gonna throw it right out there. The number varies between 25 to 200 million, okay? That 200 million is from some really far out there scholars. I didn't say it. I'm just the messenger. Ridiculous. Incomprehensible number. I can't imagine what 200 million people dead looks like. I can't imagine what 200 million people alive looks like. Horrific, if the accounts are any indication. The third contested subject within the Black Death that I'm gonna talk to you about is how it spread. Honestly, I'd rather not go into this. I gotta give you something and I can't just leave you hanging. Recently, there has been research showing that possibly the plague was spread by humans. I don't know anything about that. I know fuck all about that. I'm living in the 20th century. I'm a caveman, right? Flea caused plague. That's what I was taught. Flea bad, okay? That's what I know. I'm going back to what the fuck I know. If you believe in other theories and you want to inform me, please go ahead. Please send me articles. Please forward me your business emails. I will read up on it. I'm gonna tell you what I know, which is that the bacteria known as Yersinia pestis was carried in fleas during this time. If you want to know how they carried it, all the biological stuff around that, all the science, there's a great book. Well, there's a book called The Great Mortality by John Kelly. It has some good information in the first chapter, actually. Specifically, the first chapter has all the science-y with the fleas, and then that's it. Anyways, the fleas carry bacteria, okay? They hitch a ride on rats. Step 1, I am flea. I get infected. I carry Yersinia pestis, right? I hitch a ride on rat, okay? All right, follow me, stay with me. Rat goes near people. I flee, I jump on people. People get infected with plague, and rats are blamed for whole affair. So really, I as a flea have a scapegoat. Yes, it's the rats. Of course it's the rats. It could never be me. An unassuming flea. Anyway, rats are blamed for the whole affair. I mean, they're just... They've really had some injustice done to them over the years. Justice for the rats. Rat lives matter. I will die on this hill. I will not stop. I think it's a cause that we've put on the back burner for far too long, frankly. It was mainly the fleas that caused this, right? Or entirely the fleas, whatever you want to say. However, there were different forms of plague. Say it with me, class. Who remembers the 3 different forms of plague? That bubonic, right? The next one is septicemic, good, and What is it? Starts with a P. Pneumonic. Bubonic is the most popular form of plague to talk about in primary sources, maybe because it is the most visibly jarring. This is probably the description that most people are familiar with of the plague. So the bubonic form is called this because of the buboes, which were swellings that grew sometimes to the size of an apple. Horrendous, first of all, if we're listening to Boccaccio. Side note, actually, while we're on the topic of Boccaccio, Boccaccio was an Italian writer who is possibly one of our greatest sources on the plague. He wrote the Decameron, which revolves around the plague. Anyways, you knew that. Septicemic form of plague is characterized by internal bleeding, fun, parts of the body going black and dying. Don't threaten me with a good time, right? Pneumonic occurs primarily in the victim's lungs, includes coughing, fever, bloody saliva. If you have any choice at all, if you're gonna get one of these, and if you have any choice at all in the matter, as unpleasant as it sounds, I would definitely go for bubonic. It has the lowest mortality rate of all three. Next up is septicemic, with a little higher mortality rate. We're getting up there. Again, nasty stuff, really nasty stuff. But if for some reason you have to choose, if someone's got a gun to your head and they ask which form of plague, which form of plague do you want to be infected with or I kill you? Maybe just take the gun option. But if you really want to suffer through plague, pick bubonic. Never, and I mean never go pneumonic. In this hypothetical gun situation, never go pneumonic. Never say pneumonic. You're fucked. 100% death rate. 100. I'm talking we're capped out. I'll be at your wake saying I told you so to your grieving family. So what did people do when plague hit? What do you do when that happens? What is the course of action you take? Well, one thing you can do that is always available, this is always an option, this is always a resource available to you, is to ignore it and hope it goes away. It has always been a popular option in human history, to ignore it and hope it goes away. There were some people who started allowing no one to speak or listen to anything that was said about the sick and the dead. This is a choice. It's one of the options. It's high up on there. Let me tell you what I think, because everyone cares what I think. I have surmised that it was the upper class that this was talking about, because they are really the only ones who can afford to ignore something like this. If I'm middle, if I'm lower class, I can't ignore this. That shit's on my back porch. That shit's crawling through the door like the fucking Walking Dead. It's moaning in the form of my neighbors. Giovanni just dropped dead at the barbecue last week. Fell right on the grill. I can't ignore that shit. Ruin the sausages for everyone. You think I got the fun Okay, this is something else actually. This sort of leapfrogs off the ignoring it solution. Just leave. Hightail it out of there. Plagues in London? Perfect! I'm noping out of there so fast to my summer estate in the country, you couldn't pay me enough to live in a city during this time. I'm gone. If you were wondering, that's actually what the Decameron is about. It's this group of rich kids fucks off to their estate in the country to avoid plague, essentially tell stories to pass the time. That is the entirety of the Decameron, which coincidentally, your best option in times of plague. If you're not rich, don't worry, okay? There's still more options. I'm gonna read you the wise words of Boccaccio. Many believe that drinking excessively, enjoying life, going about singing and celebrating, satisfying in every way the appetites as best one could, laughing and making light of everything that happened was the best medicine for such a disease. Again, sort of falls in with the ignore it category. Since you can't afford to fly to your estate and country, you can just go to the bar, drink away your fears, have a good laugh, sing some songs, try to have some fun before you inevitably catch plague. What happens if you don't catch plague? Has anyone ever thought of that? Maybe everyone around you catches plague, but you don't, somehow, you lucky bastard. In that case, you can look at the writings of, and note my perfect Italian pronunciation here, Agnolo di Tura. It's like, he was an Italian chronicler who lived during the 14th century. And he said that the survivors of the plague were like persons distraught and almost without feeling. You know, I don't know who that surprises, but it's not me. If you witnessed just death on this scale around you, I think the only thing you can do is become desensitized to it. It's either fear or you shut down. And the fear, I mean This is nothing to sniff at. Entire cities were locking their gates, not letting foreigners in. And I get it. As much as I poke fun, I'm really not here to judge. If you got plague, you were lucky if anyone came around you at all. A lot of family members just left people for dead. Friends fled, even priests, actually, if you can believe it. If you need sacraments, you very well might be fucked. Even priests were booking it for the hills at this point. You'd be very lucky if you had a priest still in your hometown, willing to come near you. Honestly, all in all, it's just bad timing. It's a shitty time to have been born. Just one of those moments in history when it's just rough to be alive. And I'm sorry. Sort of like being born in the 1890s, then both world wars, the only world wars so far in human history aligned to be within your lifetime, and then you've got the Great Depression in the middle of that. It's really, and hear me out, it's really comparable to the Fast and Furious movies. Because I thought that shit was over when I was 9. And I'm sure after the First World War, they thought that shit was over too. And then they announced another one. I didn't think we needed the first one. I thought it was, you know, and you still chose to go through with that. And then there's another one coming out next year. I just want to put this into perspective for people. I had one solid year under my belt when the first movie came out. I was 1 year old. I was 3 years old when the second movie came out. I just think there was an opportunity to stop. I don't know where that was. Maybe it was at the beginning. Maybe we should have stopped before we started. But bringing this back around, I feel like that same logic and feeling of, are we really doing this again, came around at World War II. And that actually has nothing to do with the Black Death. I just got completely off track. I don't think anybody noticed. I think I hit it pretty well. If you're a contemporary and you're looking for an explanation as to why this horrid affliction has descended down upon the earth, I've come to offer you several options. Once again, the astrologers say that the plague was caused by a conjunction of certain stars and planets, or the malignant influences of the planets and the corruption of the air. And this conjunction and corruption essentially caused the Great Mortality. You could also blame God, always a helpful scapegoat. A lot of people think that maybe God's upset with their sins and has sent down a plague. Easy, clean explanation. And in that case, just repent. It's a no-brainer. There's also the foolproof explanation that the Jews did it, which I think at this point, they have been blamed at least once for every calamity in human history. There was an argument that the Jews were poisoning the wells of Christians, causing Christians to catch plague. I'm not entirely clear how that works when Jews are also catching plague. Maybe it was to throw the Christians off the scent. Far be it from me to question foolproof 14th century rationale. They did start burning Jews. However, if you were a Jew during this time, you could convert to Christianity and would kindly be spared. They would kindly refrain from burning you. You can also blame the physicians. A lot of people in modern day think that 14th century physicians were incompetent, and 14th century patients thought the same thing. They were even accused of purposely spreading the plague for more business. Considering that most physicians were not physicians, but just people who claimed to be physicians that had no training in being a physician, it was probably more due to incompetence than intent that the plague spread. I have to talk about the plague doctor mask. I have to. Because this whole getup is very commonly attributed to the Black Death in 1348. And that's a lie. You've been sold a lie. I'm sorry. This plague doctor mask is actually from the other plague that occurred later on in 1619 during the French plague. And the costume is credited to Charles Delorme, who was the personal physician of Louis XIII. These masks did have herbs and flowers in them to keep away miasmas or foul-smelling air that was thought to bring plague. Even though the mask and costumes were not part of the Black Death, the concept of miasmas were. People would carry around flowers and herbs and spices around in their hands and smell them throughout the day to keep plague away. In reality, we know now that this doesn't do anything, but if it makes you feel better, then I wouldn't say it does nothing. I mean, it's not hurting anybody. If everybody's dropping dead around you and sniffing a flower makes you feel better, sniff a fucking flower. Some other proposed remedies for when one gets the plague is to vomit every day, possibly in order to reject the poison of the devil from one's body. You can do some bloodletting, drink some warm ale with ginger and lie in a warm bed and just sweat that shit out. You know what? I think I'm gonna start wrapping this up, but before I wrap it up, wait, I would like to turn our attention for a moment to our Lord and Savior Petrarch. You guys are gonna love Petrarch. He actually created the term Dark Ages. I love him. He was not a happy camper. He is very far from me. I would say actually, in fact, he's my polar opposite. He was not a fan of his time period. This man was a poet. I personally feel that he is, if not the father of the emos, at least a distant uncle. Look at this man. Just look at him. Now that this is ingrained in your mind, let me read to you a letter written by Petrarch about his feelings on the plague. Whither shall I turn? On all sides is sorrow, everywhere is fear. I would, my brother, that I had never been born, or at least had died before these times. O happy people of the future, who have not known these miseries and perchance will class our testimony with the fables. When I read Petrarch, he's on another plane of existence to me. I adore Petrarch, I really do. And you should too, because I say so. I'm mandating it. I'm mandating that you love Petrarch as much as I do. You get it, right? This is what Petrarch does to me. This man thinks that we won't believe them when they write about the plague. He thinks this whole event was so terrible that no one's gonna believe it even really happened. That's all. Thank you for watching. I hope you gained some semblance of education or perhaps entertainment value out of this. Have a good day, have a good life. Remember to sniff some lavender to keep the plague away. Bye.